Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Film Focus, episode 202, Hopes and Fears for Tron Ares. Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen of the North, South, East and West, and welcome to another episode of Film Focus. I'm your host, the Hypersonic 55, and I'm glad that you decided to join me once again for some film-related discussion. And yes, before we get into the topic of conversation, I do have to address my disappearance of the podcast. Unfortunately, as with last year, there was a point where things just got really busy, and even though there were films I was interested in talking about, I didn't feel compelled to talk about them in the same way that I had in the months prior, so I did unfortunately leave the podcast for a few weeks before coming back. But there is a topic of discussion that I really wanted to bring up on the podcast, and that is Tron Ares, the latest film in the Tron series. It's just over a month away, and I wanted to talk about my hopes and fears for this film because I am so mixed about this film. From the time it was announced to the trailers that I've seen, there is reasons to be excited, but also reasons to be concerned. There was just so many things in my head that I had to just talk about on this podcast. So as I did with Mortal Kombat and Sonic before, I want to talk about a list of my hopes for this film and then talk about my fears, because I feel like both are valid and I just think it'd be a fun little discussion on the podcast. So yeah, be sure to sit down and just hear me out. Okay, so let's start with the hopes. Firstly, the film needs to expand upon the world of Tron in a meaningful way. Now, the digital world of Tron is so cool, unique, weird, and full of potential for so many stories. And I just love this digital world that's been created. Now, from the Ecom mainframe in the first film to the grid in the second film, so much had changed. There were so many extra details that we didn't know about the world in terms of its inhabitants, how many locations there were, and how many secrets there were. And now that we're going into this new film in Ares, 15 years have taken place since the last film. Now, I don't know how much time would have passed in the film world as opposed to real life if they'll take on the fact that it's been a decade and a half since the last entry. But I'm interested to know what has changed. How has the grid evolved? What is new and what has remained the same? And will we get to see any additional locations beyond what we saw before? And I'm curious to know why the programs are in the real world and how did they obtain the ability to do so. Will there be any ties to Sam and Cora after they left the grid in Legacy? There are so many questions, and I can only hope that we get some decent answers that add to the world instead of subtracting from it. Point number 2, make good use of Jeff Bridges. Now, Jeff Bridges is one of the finest actors that we have, and I think he's been pretty good in the movies, especially Tron Legacy, where he ended up having to play 2 roles, Kevin Flynn and Clue. Now, I'm still hoping that Flynn will be a key component of the film, and there is plenty to suggest that he'll still be notable in this film from what we've seen in the trailers. However, I'm just hoping that there's still good material for Bridges to work with. Now, obviously, I doubt he would come back if there wasn't something of value that he would be able to contribute, but I'm just hoping that Bridges and his character aren't going to be shortchanged in regards to the rest of the cast. Point number 3, give the story and characters some depth. I love the world of Tron and the many things that make it cool and intriguing, from the visual design to the environment to the vehicles, outfits, and so much more. However, where the series has lacked a little bit is in the story and character depth. The first film is fairly straightforward, and you could argue it doesn't need any extra layers as the visuals make up for it. However, I've always felt like more could have been done to explore the human characters, the company that they work for on the outside, as well as the digital one, and learn more about the programs and the MCP. Legacy had more going for it plot-wise, but needed some refinement to make some of the themes, ideas, and emotional elements hit a little harder. Character-wise, the first film was paper thin. They were fine, but there wasn't any distinctive traits or memorable elements. whereas Legacy attempted to give the characters extra dimensions with style, personalities, and motivations, but not all of them were as interesting or as compelling as I would have hoped. So Ares now has a chance to make up the difference by telling an exciting story with engaging characters that have depth as well as style, but we'll see what happens when that comes around. Point number 4, the visuals need to be on point. Now, this probably isn't going to be so much of an issue, and I think from what we've seen from the marketing so far, they are pretty much hitting the nail on the head so far. But as everybody knows who are old enough to have seen the original, Tron from the 80s was a visual showcase, and Tron Legacy in 2010 pushed the visual effects and art directions to new heights. And Ares seems to be borrowing the aesthetic from Legacy when it comes to the color scheme, lighting, suits, and vehicles. But I'm curious to see if things will look more detailed, shinier, or will have the power to wow audiences with locations and action sequences which are unlike what's come before. Again, the trailers have given us some very interesting things to look at, especially when it comes to the Tron based stuff from the digital world coming into the real world. So there are already visual things we are not familiar with that's in the trailers. So I'm hoping that there's not only going to be more of that, but also we get to see more of what's happening in the digital world as well. So I'm just curious to see what the filmmakers are going to do to make this more visually compelling than what's come before. Again, it's a tall order. I think they have a chance. That is their strongest element that they have going for them right now from what we've seen from the trailers. And my final point is that Nine Inch Nails need to deliver a good soundtrack. Now, while this seems like a foregone conclusion considering the talent involved, it still needs to be said. Daft Punk set such a high freaking bar with the Tron Legacy soundtrack. Them coming together with Tron was a match made in heaven, and they made magic, and that was executed to perfection. That film score was dark, atmospheric, intense, and dramatic, but also very cool, and the way it blended the traditional orchestrated sound with the more electronic beats that the duo was known for was just great. I love so many tracks from that film score, from the end credits to The Grid to D-Res to The Fall and Outlands, so many other tracks, and even taking into consideration the complete form of the soundtrack. It's just great. It's really good. Now, when it comes to Nine Inch Nails coming onto this project, I was like, okay, that's not too bad. And I'm not going to lie, I've only heard a handful of their songs, but the fan base that surrounds them seemed to be pretty chuffed. But I wasn't aware of the band's members until I looked them up, and then I was like, oh, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. That changed my opinion dramatically. Now, Reznor and Ross are responsible for some of the coolest and most unique film scores that we've gotten over the last 10 or so years, especially when they dropped on the scene with The Social Network in 2010. I've liked a lot of their work, including The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl, Soul, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. So with their unique sounds being brought to the world of Tron, it's actually a solid choice. I do wonder what their approach will be. Will they continue or reference the themes of Legacy or carve out their own original material entirely? Now, if the second trailer is anything to go off of, then it seems like they're going for a much more aggressive, harder kind of sound, and we did get to hear a little bit of the track As Alive As You Need Me to Be. And I've heard that song recently, and I'm like, okay, you know what? This is actually pretty cool. I will admit, hearing a vocal-based song that'll be featured in a Tron film did throw me off a little bit, but I'm sure in the contents of the movie, they'll do good work. Okay, and now it's time to talk about my fears for the film, and they go as following. Point number 1. The Tron stuff in the real world is just a gimmick. Though it's interesting to see Tron iconography in the real world and see how defenseless humanity is against their machines like the light cycles or recognizers, I do wonder what is their end game with this. Sure, it looks cool and it changes things up from the last two films, but is there an intriguing or logical reason for this? Or is this just a desperate scheme to boost interest in the franchise because they couldn't come up with any other ideas? Sure, fun/interesting things can happen just based on cool ideas, but I do hope that there's more going on under the surface, because I'd like to think that they're not just bringing Tron into the real world unless there's a good reason for it. Point number 2. Jared Leto gives us another questionable performance. So yeah, it has become a bit of a running gag with his filmography, but it's still worth noting. My first notable exposure to Jared Leto was in Dallas Buyers Club, and I thought it was pretty darn good. But it's safe to say that every so often he comes up with some questionable meme-worthy performances, whether you're talking about Suicide Squad or House of Gucci or a small appearance in Zack Snyder's Justice League or, more recently, Morbius. Now, you can argue his unique performances add value to the films that he's in or make for a more memorable experience overall because of the unintentional comedy that is involved. And sometimes that's fine, but I'd rather not have him be an awkward stain on a franchise that desperately needs every bit of help it can get to be successful. And I'm hoping that his shenanigans won't hurt this film and put a downer on any good character, story, or presentation. Now, I think I read somewhere online that Leto was partly instrumental in trying to get this franchise to come back, and he was a pretty big advocate for trying to get Tron to come back in any way, shape, or form. So maybe I will be thanking him at the end of this film for a good film overall, but I guess we'll see. I don't hate Jared Leto, I just find him a very up and down individual, and he's done a lot of stuff that just makes me raise an eyebrow, so I don't know. I just hope that he doesn't, tarnish this movie. Okay, next point. The film ignores the events of the previous films. Now, I know that this is already a sort of done and dusted kind of point, but I did want to bring it up anyway. Ares is described as a standalone sequel, and to a degree I understand why. You get the benefits of stepping into an established world and getting to utilize all of its goodies, but you don't have to be creatively locked down by the elements that came before. And sometimes that's fine, and other times it isn't. With Ares, we still don't know much about the connective tissue to the past. They say that it will acknowledge the past but not be tied to it. And again, that's fine, but here's the thing. We know that Jeff Bridges is back, so that's the one consistent through line between these movies. But what happened to Sam and Cora? Is Alan still around? What about the other programs in the grid? And a lot of people got invested in the material that came before, especially when you're talking about Tron Legacy, or the smaller area of the fan base that got involved with the Tron Uprising TV show. Now, maybe the filmmakers couldn't find a way to tell a story following those events, or maybe they don't care, who knows? I guess we won't know about the deepness and connective elements until we see the film, but I don't know, man. It just seems kind of odd that we are going back to the world of Tron, but only acknowledging a part of it, but not acknowledging some of the more interesting things that was done before. But hey, we'll see. And then my final fear is that Tron Ares ends up being okay to bad, but it puts the franchise on ice for another decade or more. So outside of Tron entering the real world, my main concern is the fact that Tron Ares will be an okay to bad film. Tron as a franchise is still notable but still niche within film fandom. There are those who love it and will defend it to the ends of the earth, while others never got into it or just don't care. And this era of Hollywood is obsessed with prequels, sequels, requels, reboots, remakes, and reimaginings of notable franchises. And while not always successful, there have been some good legacy sequels when it comes to stuff like Toy Story 3, Blade Runner 2049, Trainspotting 2, Halloween 2018, Doctor Sleep, and Ghostbusters Afterlife, just to name a few. And of course, after how good Top Gun Maverick was, studios surely have been wondering how to replicate that same kind of success with their own dormant IPs. Now, I don't know if this team will have the power to resurrect this franchise and make it matter and provide satisfaction for not only long-term fans, but also bring in new audiences as well. OG Tron and Tron Legacy made money, but not the kind of money that would make headlines or make studios very happy. Now, quality-wise, being a good or okay film is fine if the box office comes in, but if the money isn't there, then Tron will not be seen as a viable franchise for mass audiences and will probably be put on ice for a good while. And that would be pretty crap. There are so many possibilities and directions this franchise could go in. It just needs the right cooks and it needs a willing audience to give it a try. But I guess all of my suspicions will be answered in just around a month's time. And I also just want to know, for the love of Christ, where is Tron for a film franchise that has his name in there? We don't see him in the trailers. I hope he's in the film somewhere. It would be nice to see our program come back and be in the film that has his bloody name. But we'll see. Okay, so that's me done. I hope that you enjoyed the discussion, and feel free to drop me some comments in the comment section below, or hit me up on Twitter where I'm at Hypersonic55 or at FilmFocus55, or check us out on Instagram. The podcast can be found in various different places, whether you're talking about SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and all that stuff. And yeah, just let me know what you think about Tron Ares. Are you excited? Are you cautiously optimistic? Are you afraid? Do you feel like any of the stuff that I had have any value, or do you think I'm just chatting a load of nonsense, or do you feel like my fears are, misguided? Whatever you have to say, just let me know, and until the next time, this is the Hypersonic 55 signing out. Peace.